Episode 28, When It Gets Hard to Fit the Pieces Together. Welcome to Reviving Your Soul, where Christians are finding the courage to embrace their faith in all aspects of their lives so they can stop being bored or overwhelmed and begin to live the life in fulfillment and in peace that God created them for. I'm your host, Vanna Johnson. Let's get started. I have a almost 3-year-old grandson who loves solving puzzles. A few weeks ago, when he was visiting, I went in search of a puzzle that we could do together. The only one that even looked remotely possible was in a small box, and it had a picture of a cat on it. Unfortunately, I found that a small box does not necessarily mean it's an easy puzzle. Not only were the pieces small, they were all about the same color. Yeah, it was a little advanced for my little guy, but I thought together we could make it work. I have to say he did a pretty good job. There were only a few times that he would try to put two pieces together that clearly didn't fit. But oh, he tried. He'd line them up as best as he could, and then he'd put his whole body into trying to force the pieces together. But no matter how many groans and grunts and how much muscle he put into it, they just wouldn't connect properly. It made me think about life. You know, those times when we try so hard to make something come together the way we want it to, and no matter how hard we try, no matter how much muscle we put into it, we just can't make it work. It occurred to me that this struggle, or this effort to try and make something fit that just wasn't meant to go together, can cause us so much strain in our lives. It's another one of those storms that we encounter, like a steady, never-ending rain. We don't think that much about it until it's ruined our plans, and it makes everything soggy and just yuck, and we get slippery roads and possibly even mudslides. I had this conversation with a client the other day about a relationship that she was in. It just felt like so much work, and she found she wasn't comfortable letting her guard down to fully be herself with this other person. In that conversation, I shared how I, too, had been in one of those relationships many years ago. For far longer than anyone should ever be in that kind of a relationship. In fact, I'd been trying so hard for years on end to make this relationship work that I didn't even realize how hard I'd been working at it until I wasn't forcing it anymore. As hard as I tried, as many ways as I twisted and turned to make myself be the person that I thought the other person wanted me to be, I could never quite get it right. Oh, there were days when it felt right, and I even felt truly happy for a while. But we always fell back into this routine where I was guessing what I needed to do next to keep him happy. Fortunately, despite my pleas to God to help the relationship work, it didn't work, and we ended up going our separate ways. As I mentioned earlier, what I didn't realize until much later when I met the man that I was going to marry was how much effort I had put into being someone that I wasn't. It was so freeing when I met my future husband to be able to just be me and know that I was loved just being me. Whether it's in a relationship or it's in our job, finances, even some of the communities that we join, if we have to work really hard to make it work, it may simply not be the right place for us. Sometimes we want something so bad, or we feel the need to do something out of obligation or out of guilt, that we don't even realize how wrong of a fit it is for us. Honestly, I wish I had become aware of this concept earlier in my life, as there are definitely things I would have done differently. I caution you to be careful here, though, because you need to be sure not to assume that all struggles in life are a sign that we need to end a relationship or get a different job or whatever. It could mean we need to change the way we are perceiving the other person or the work we do. So how do you know which is which, you ask? Great question. And this is the $1 million answer I wish I had known about years and years ago. We simply need to ask. We need to quit trying so darn hard to force it, whatever it is, to work and find out why it isn't working. In fact, I love how Solomon states it in Proverbs 16, verses 1 through 4, and then again in verse 9. He says, "We can gather our thoughts, but the Lord gives the right answer. People may be pure in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their motives. Commit your work to the Lord, and then your plans will succeed. The Lord has made everything for His own purpose. We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our step. So I believe we can translate this to mean that we can make our plans, but the outcome is in God's hands. So why do we make plans, you ask? Because when we are working to do God's will, we need to make some effort and then turn it over to His control. He wants us to use our minds, to seek the advice of others, and to plan. But in the end, we need to remember that the results are up to Him. Ask for guidance as you plan, and then act on your plans as you trust in Him. He will then show you the way if you are patient and fully trust Him. Before putting a plan into action, we really should ask ourselves 3 things. Is the plan in alignment with God's truth? Will it work when placed to test in real life? And do I have the right attitude about this? Committing our work to the Lord can be a challenge. Some people only make superficial commitments where they say they are going to do it for the Lord, but in reality, they're really doing it for themselves. Others will turn it over to God, but then they'll take back control of the situation as soon as it's headed in the direction they expected it to go, or sometimes if it doesn't head in the direction they expect it to, and they aren't comfortable with where it's going. Still others will commit to a task fully to the Lord, but then they will not put any effort in on their own behalf. They then wonder why they do not succeed. It truly is a balancing act between trusting God as if everything depended on Him, while working as if everything depended on us. I like to qualify this statement by adding we need to do that without overdoing it. I actually believe some go too far with the long hours of work and the stressing ourselves out and getting so technical about it that we leave very little room for God to show His power in the work. As I said, it is a balancing act, but without getting too technical, the key is to seek God's guidance through prayer and in Scripture. The answers truly are there. Another word of caution I would like to give is to be careful about who you're getting advice from. Somehow, many of us have been led to this belief that we cannot possibly know enough to make important decisions ourselves. I think that's Satan trying to keep us from doing the work we're given to do. So we ask everyone we know and hopefully trust what they think about this big decision we're trying to make. Sadly, we do this without regard to how much they know about the situation, or worse, how much they know about us and our true God-given potential. We don't consider their background in making decisions, and we don't consider whether they will answer in a manner that protects their own best interest or our own. I found this devotion from Shauna Nyquist in her book, Savor, very fitting. First, she quotes Ecclesiastes 7:21 and 22, which says, "Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servants cursing you, for you know in your heart that many times you may ourselves have cursed them." She then goes on to say that Solomon, quote, knew what it's like to live for the opinion of others, and he knew that it is as meaningless as chasing the wind, because it doesn't last. What one person loves is what another person hates. What one person thinks is amazing, another person calls total failure. So you wear yourself out trying to respond and pivot and change yourself according to every little thing anyone says. And you end up so tired and so far from your calling and so far from being satisfied. So much of the biblical narrative is about God calling His people away from idolatry over and over and over. And this is one more example. When you allow other people's opinion of you define you, that person becomes an idol, a substitute for God. God made you, and He defines you. He calls you. He leads you. When you let yourself be led and called and divined by the clamoring voices that have something to say about every little thing, you'll never be satisfied. You'll never feel peace. You'll never be at rest. She goes on to say then, whose opinion matters to you? How do those opinions stack up against God's definition of you? Spend some quiet moments with God. Ask Him to center you once again in His love and in His calling for your life. Wow, I really love that. And I believe that because the Holy Spirit lives within us, we can be confident in who we are and the decisions that He will lead us to. What can be scary is because his job is to lead us to fulfill God's calling on our lives and to help us lead our best life, sometimes the call he whispers in our ear can be scary. So we forget that he will never call us to something he won't equip us to do, and we don't trust his guidance then. We take polls to see what others think, and frankly, most others are going to give advice that will likely keep you where you are. So please, if you are in the process of making a big or several big decisions in your life, find someone who will hold that beautiful vision of you that you have until you are ready to fully step into that best version of you. Don't seek out someone who will hold you back or who isn't willing to trust you and know you well enough to know that God has big plans for your life. So earlier when I was talking about how it doesn't have to be hard, I want you to be able to make a distinction between hard as in this isn't right for you versus hard as in you're going to have to make a stretch and do something that makes you feel uncomfortable, but in a good way, in a really good way. Like I had no idea God had this plan for me all along, good way. See the difference? So my challenge for you is this. The next time you are struggling to do something you're feeling is yours to do your research, pray about it, run it through those 3 questions, the test that I gave you earlier. Is the plan in alignment with God's truth? Will it work when it's placed to the test of real life? And do I have the right attitude about this? If the answer is yes, go for it. Reach for the dream that God has placed in your heart. He has something that needs to be done, and he chose you to do it. If you say no, he'll try again. But eventually he's going to find someone else if you don't have the courage to go for it. I call it courageous faith, and I trust with all my heart that God will provide all that we need when we need it to help us fulfill our purpose in life. So, what are you holding back on? If you are miserable where you are, or maybe just have that sense of just being dissatisfied somehow, it may be time to make a change. If God is closing that door for you, he will open another. Stay watchful and be ready to take action. If you need someone to help you with that, it would be my pleasure to see if I might be the right person to help you. All it takes is a conversation. By the end of an hour, we will both know if it's a good fit for us or not. In the meantime, you get to discover things about yourself that you either never knew or maybe you forgot about. It's fun and it's easy, and it can honestly be the best hour you've invested in yourself in years. If it sounds enticing, message me or hop over to my website to schedule a call. It doesn't cost you anything but that time you invest in yourself, and truly, I think you'll be pleased with how amazing it really can be. If you know someone who needs to hear this message, please share it with them. It may be the best gift you ever give to them. Thank you for listening today and have an amazing week.